All right, Sam, back with you here. We are midday. It's noonish, February 12th, and next coin up for the day per the polling that we do now amongst members is for Ripple to Bitcoin. I've got it here on Binance, and I'm looking at the daily chart. Now, because this is on Binance here, you can see we're not going back. We don't have the full history of Ripple, but I'm working off of this low here on what is that, December 6th of 2017. Apparently that's when Ripple to Bitcoin hit Binance. But some interesting things to note here. So always good to start with the longer time frame. So looking here, that just I can do a couple of things. So I can work from here and see, well, probably 1, 2, 3, 4. That's pretty clear. So I get a nice 5-wave sequence here. So working off of this low, and we'll wick that off. Working off of that low, I get a nice impulsive structure on the daily chart. Wham bam, up we go. So given that, first thing I'm going to do is just as I would with any 5-wave structure, I'm just going to pull from swing low. I can get it right here to the swing high and see what I see. Okay, well, what do we get? Well, that's kind of interesting. So we get a double tap into the golden zone. So what does that tell you? Well, the fact that we've got good technical trading here is kind of interesting. And the fact that we've got what would be evidence of algorithmic activity, given this. I'd want to look at here at this, if this is the A, B, C of sorts. Let's look here. We'll dig in a little bit more on the lower time frame. Well, that's kind of interesting. So you can see here, same thing here. We go right to the golden zone here on the retracement, likely the B wave here. We come down. Here's their algo target. They tap it here, up they go. So it might be kind of interesting to see if we work from this. So they get it twice. So boom. So what does that tell us? Okay, well, number one is trading technically. 2, algos are in. We got algo tracks going up and going down. So where are we now? So given this potential second tap in here, so you can think of it this way. Here's the first low question mark. It gets retested, right? So double bottom right here in the range of the first of the 1, 2. So right by the Elliott playbook, and certainly by algo tracks galore. So let's go down here, and I don't have anything planned out here. I'm just kind of, as I would approach it if I were looking at it for the first time myself and just kind of trying to get a handle on where we are. Is there a trade here? Well, so the first thing that it's hard not to do this. So since we've got an A, B, C, it would look like that's a B. So you might have, so it would appear that so I've got an A. This has to be the B. We looked at that, and then I get a C here. But that looks like 3-wave as well. So you may have. This is where it gets a little dicey here. So we could well have a WXY. So all we're doing here is completing. So if that would be the X. Are we? So let's look at that. So the X wave just connects two ABCs. That's all it is. So we get it completed because we know this is likely, given the ABC structure of it and the fact that it was technical, right? As we just looked at it on the daily, we know that was a technical pivot. So working from that low, right, into the golden zone, right to their target, we bounce. So it's hard to count that any other way. So the X wave is the connector. So is this our Y back into the golden zone? Well, it could be. We may be going impulsive here. So how would we get that to fit? So this would have to be, we'd have to look at the, potentially you'd have this here. Come on, get hot. There we go. So we got A, B. We come down for the C. Anything technical there that I can work off of? So I can pull from this low. Probably that high. Well, there's the 50. That's their first target. That's their second target. So I've got a bit of a confluence zone down here. Certainly, we defer to the larger trend. So swing low to swing high. That's the larger degree. We've double bottomed into the golden zone, and now we've had a reaction off of it. And we're through now. See, note that we're through the 6.5 from this pivot. So we could well have a WXY here that we've completed. So again, just all the WXY is doing is connecting to ABCs. So hard to argue with that ABC. And from this potential B to this C, I wouldn't count that as a 1, 2, 3. That just doesn't play as well. So I think we've got a WXY. That seems more likely here, given the technical pivot here. So could this be? I suppose you could make the case you got one more here, and you just got a truncated move here. But I'll work from that. So let's go down to the 1 hour. What can we get out of that? So if we're working from this as a low, well, it ain't pretty, but we can make a case here. So let's pull this off. We know this is the pivot we're trying to get a handle on. So we could work from this low, just as we would with anything, and say, okay, well, we got a little wick through the 6.5. But if we're playing this as a 1-2, we know a 2 can go as low as the 7.86. So we could have this. So we get, looks like we've got potentially a 3, 4, 5. Okay, nothing wrong with that. So I can look at that and say, okay, does that make sense? Can I make sense of that? Is that potentially my 1 wave high? Well, my 4 wave, let's check the 2 to the 4. Right, so this is just, the more you do these, you'll be able to do them pretty quickly. So right to the 50, and it looks like I've got subdivision there. Now it looks like it's rolling over here one more time. So is this an A wave, B wave? Let's consider that as a scenario. So if we go swing high to low, there's the 50. Here's the next target down here. That would change it if we were to go to their target, that algo target down here at the negative 23 off of this 50. Looks like we double top there, front run on the 50. So that would create this for their target. Get my arrow. So from this 50, their target is down here. There's the negative 23. Well, if we get there and we overlap the 1, doesn't change the 5-wave structure. It just means we'd have a leading diagonal. We'd have a diagonal structure coming off of this pivot low here. 1, if I'd have to go down to a smaller time frame, but likely I can get a 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C into the 4, up for a 5. So I can get an A, B, C into my 2 here. So nothing too radical here. So question mark. Are we rolling over one more time? Is this going to come over here and we'd end up with an ABC? Well, that certainly plays. So if we pull that off and go, okay, well, this is where we're looking for that confluence. Right back. We know this market likes the 618. We know they like the golden zone. Right? We can see it here. We've seen it twice, right? We just looked at it, right? So we once, twice, again. So you'd look. So the expectation would be that pattern continues. So so what's the play here? Well, I wouldn't necessarily be a buyer here on the assumption that we've got a truncated C. That's in question right now. That was kind of the 2017 trade, was these shallow C waves, the impatient market, the very, very strong bullish market where we were getting the shallow C waves. Now, sir, we could see a triangle because this would be a 4th, but I would not be overly ambitious here until I got a test down here, at least of this low. Back to the 50, so again, if I looked for a more traditional A to ABC relationship, if I work from this as my A, then up to my B, well, now I get the 618 right in the pocket here. So building more confluence that this is my zone here where I want to be looking for the next trade. I've got structural support here, prior resistance, potentially some support. So if I'm looking for a trade in Ripple to Bitcoin, I'm willing to wait for that entry right here, front run on the 618. May not get there, right? That we've seen it. So look at this confluence I've got here. I've got pattern. I've got my Vegas wave. I've got a recurring pattern that we know the algos like. They're coming into the golden zone, and then they're pushing up to the negative 23. We saw it get hit twice. I've got potentially a completed correction, albeit somewhat complex, but I've got a completed correction. All these pivots have been technical. I've got a good 1-2, and now I've got a nice confluence here between the ABC relationship, the 2 to the 3 relationship. I got my Vegas wave. Anything on the oscillators that might help me? This comes down a little bit lower. We might get into that lower oversold range, if you will, where you create the energy. I just think of it as energy. Can we get the energy to recycle this back up to the overbought zone? So how would that affect us? Well, are we going to go up to the algo target here? Again, no reason to anticipate that we wouldn't. So that's a trade you got to take. Why? So again, as I will often say, why would you not take that trade? Unless you see something better. So this looks like it's setting up rather nicely. I would certainly be alarming that. Right, I'd want to know when we start approaching. I would want to know when I get on the other side of the 50 and we start approaching this 618. So let's pull that out in terms of where we could be going. So if we go back out to the 4 hour and you go, well, is it worth screwing around with that? Where could we be going? Well, let's put that in context, right? So as I've shown you many times, the negative 100, we know that's going to be very close. If this plays, so if in the largest degree, this were playing as a 1-2, we had a 2. Well, we know the 3 is likely up here. Right, we know that's going to be very close to the 1618. That's the highest probability zone. I mean, I'll show it to you just so if you, in case you hadn't seen this before. So if that's our, see how that lines up here? So we get, it's almost always right on it when the pull goes to the 618. Right, so here we just this nice fat zone. So you go, okay, well, is it worth screwing around down here for that? Well, what kind of risk reward am I looking at here? That's my target. You know, at the extreme would be to give it that much room. I don't need to even give it anywhere near that kind of room. So if I look here, I'm on the other side of the 786. That's 20.6 to 1. Worth waiting for? I mean, I suppose you could make the case that, you know, if you want to give it plenty of room, you get in now. That way you're not going to miss anything. I mean, why? So my view is I'd rather take a couple of small stops trying to get positioned in there in a good technical spot, because I can lose a few in here if I get set up for a 20 to 1. Now, that doesn't mean that it goes there. I'm not saying that it must go there, but it certainly sets up. So, you know, last thing we're going to do, we got good 3 hard pivots here. We're going to put a pitchfork on it. Well, that's the modified. Let's get back to original recipe. That's kind of interesting, you know, right? So you get a time factor there with a pitchfork, right? Is it here? Is it here? Are we? Well, that's the first algo target. There's the 100%. Yeah, so if this low holds, right? Remember this with median lines. If that low holds, we've got 80% probability of getting to that median line. Now, do we go through and get this upper target up here? Well, you know, of course, we don't know. But this would be an important pivot here to get to an excess of 100% the length of the first wave. So we could qualify this as a likely candidate for the third, which increases the probabilities that we had. You know, we may not get it till over here. I mean, nothing says we have to go straight up. You know, this could certainly play this way. I mean, what? Just out of curiosity, what would that be? That's April 15th, tax day. Yeah, that's not out, you know, that's certainly a viable path that we could be taking. So then you come back down to it and you go, well, is it worth screwing around in here to try and set that up? Yeah, again, I mean, so that you don't even have to get that. So we could go on the other side of the 786. Now what have you got? 28 to 1. I certainly would alarm it. How about we leave it at that? All right, guys, that's one to watch. Wrap it there.